Hi everyone, and welcome to my 2020 Inktober Sketchbook tour. This was my 5th year taking part in this challenge, and I'm so happy to say that this is the 5th time that I've completed it. I really love taking part in this because it always seems to encourage me to try drawing ideas and techniques that I haven't tried before, and I think it's a brilliant way to develop your ability over a month. I think it's also helpful because not only do you get out of your comfort zone, but also you can set a schedule, whether you want to work on the daily or the weekly word prompts, or if you wanted to try a themed prompt list to practice drawing something more specific. Setting up a schedule for yourself and sticking to it over the course of the month is a great thing for any artist to practice. I find it so exciting to check out the hashtags every day of the challenge. It's amazing to see all the incredible artwork being posted by everyone. And in terms of the supplies I used for my drawings, for the inking I used Sakura Pigma Micron pens and a Pentel pocket brush pen. For the shading and the colouring I used Copic markers. And then for the highlighting, I used white GellyRoll pens, and sometimes I faded those highlights outwards with a white Faber-Castell polychromos pencil. And then, like previous years, I decided to work in a Rowney Earthbound sketchbook. I've been really looking forward to recording this sketchbook tour, and I can't wait to share my drawings with you. So here we go! On day 1, the word prompt was fish, and so I attempted this drawing of a koi carp, which is something that I've never tried before, so this was a really tough challenge trying to get right, but it was fun and interesting to try and get the patterning and the scale effects and the highlights. My main focus on this drawing was actually the layering, trying to get that right with the water lilies, the lily pads, the surface of the water with the fish underneath, and then underneath that with the rocks and the gravel. So to bring it all together, I needed to consider the light source to add the shadows, and that was another tough challenge, trying to get the shadows right, to make it look like there's space between the lily pads and the rocks. But it was so much fun. I loved trying this, and just something new. So I'd love to draw some more koi carp in the future. Then on day 2, the word prompt was wisp, and I really struggled on this word, trying to think of an idea. And initially I was thinking a wisp of hair, but in the end I opted for the folklore, will-o'-the-wisp, the ghostly light that floats above swamps and marshes and lures people in. So you can see the ghostly light there, and you can see the trail of light that floats between these very creepy looking trees above this swamp. I'm very pleased with this one, considering how long it took me to decide what to work on. Then on to day 3, and the word prompt was bulky. And as some of you know, I absolutely love drawing dragons, and I'll draw them at any chance I get. So on this one, it's a massive dragon that looks like it's just rolled out of bed, it's knocking all the trees over. And as some of you also might know, I love adding this red-caped character to a lot of my drawings. So they made a feature here, facing up against this massive dragon with the moon shining down and highlighting the outer edges. I wanted to make this scene look very cold as well, with the frosty trees and the snow on the ground. And I'm very pleased with this. I love drawing dragons, as I said, and I just find this kind of stuff so much fun to work on, thinking about the story of this red-caped character. On to day 4, and the word prompt was radio, and I initially struggled again with this prompt, but in the end I decided on this radio tower, on this hilly landscape, and I really tried hard to create a quiet and cold atmosphere on this one. I wanted it to look like a very lonely radio tower in this landscape. I spent most of the time working on the trees because I went overboard with all the details on them, but I find these style of trees so fun to work on. And hopefully it gave the effect of a very cold atmosphere. I found this one very fun and interesting to try. Then, continuing on to day 5, the word prompt was blade. And this is quite similar to a previous drawing I worked on last year with the sword in the water, but this time I tried to add some bright colours with crimson in the trees and this plant wrapped around the sword itself with this flower and the light shining down. I really enjoyed working on this and spending lots of time on the details. I just love the idea of this story of a long forgotten sword that's waiting to be discovered. Then on to day 6, and the word prompt was rodent. and I worked on this squirrel. I love squirrels, I think they're awesome, and I wanted to give this one a nice big smile on its face. It's very happy with its food and the light shining down. And I always feel really inspired this time of year with the changing seasons, with all the leaves turning bright yellows and oranges and reds on the trees themselves and on the ground. So I decided to add all these leaves surrounding the squirrel. It's just a drawing of a very happy looking squirrel. Fancy was the word prompt on day 7, and I found this one difficult as well. I was initially thinking fancy clothes or a crown or something like that, but in the end I decided to go back to my fantasy world setting with the red-caped character again, and they're visiting this very fancy looking house in the forest. And on purpose I decided not to say whether they're visiting a friend or a foe. I really enjoyed the idea of everyone having their own interpretation of the story behind my drawings, and I find that a lot more fun. So yeah, why is the red-caped character visiting this house, and who lives there? And a big focus for this drawing for me was the contrast and adding depth to the drawing overall, to try and create a 3D effect with the steps going up to the house. So the dull shading around the outside, the strong contrast between the highlights and the shadows around the house itself and the steps and the water, a lighter foreground and bright contrast on the tree as well. And obviously the thing that stands out the most is the crimson cape of the character. I really enjoyed this one. Then on to day 8, and the word prompt was teeth. And again, we're here with the red-caped character, and they're visiting this massive skeleton of a dragon with these huge teeth. Maybe the character will use them as a crafting material, or maybe that's the reason why the character was there at that house. Maybe that was the request of the person living there, asking them to collect these teeth. I don't know, but I just love thinking about stories like this with this character. Next up, on day 9, the word prompt was throw. So I worked on this throwing axe that's just been thrown. You can see the motion lines, so it's spinning through the air. I was inspired by Viking design with these engravings, and you can see crimson here, so maybe it's owned by the red-caped character. I've got trees in the background and stars in the sky. This one was really fun, and the engravings definitely took the most time. Then on to day 10, and the word was hope. This one was tricky, trying to get the feeling of hope in a drawing. In the end, I chose to draw some really dark clouds circling and spinning in the sky, blocking the sun that's shining down, and you got the trees on both sides have died and withered away, but at the centre you have this tree that's still alive, and this blossom, so it's just a symbol of things continuing. Next up, on day 11, the word prompt was disgusting, and I worked on this horrible jelly monster with this skull, and I imagine it's covered in these disgusting liquid-filled sacs, and any weapons used against it, like the sword and the arrows, just seem to get absorbed. I enjoyed trying to create that translucent effect as well. This one was really fun. Then on to day 12, and the word prompt was slippery. And I loved working on this because penguins are my granny's favourite animal, and every year we try and get her a penguin calendar for Christmas. So I really enjoyed trying this idea with this penguin sliding down the snow and the ice, with the icebergs in the background and the moon shining down and the stars in the sky. I'm very happy with this one. The word prompt on day 13 was Dune. So I worked on this desert dune with these ancient ruins and this whale flying in the sky. I've worked on a flying humpback whale in a previous Inktober sketchbook, so I wanted to try it again, and I actually wasn't sure which drawing I was going to add it into or which day. This one just seemed to work out really well because I noticed while I was sketching the dune that the pattern on it was similar to the pattern on the humpback whale's belly. So I thought adding them together, maybe they'll complement each other. That was my goal anyway, and hopefully it worked out. I found this one really exciting to try. Then on day 14, the word was armour, and I found this one so tough. Trying to get the armour to look correct with the symmetry and the proportions, and the fine details like the chain armour and the fine chain details I added here. And you can see the crimson colouring. So the red cape, is this the red caped character's enemy? Or is this the red caped character that's been magically transformed? You can see the magical effects I tried to add in the background circling around them, and these white ink effects I added here, with the skull and the vampire teeth, and they've been hit by a few arrows as well. This one was really fun to try. Continuing on to day 15, and the word prompt was outpost. And I was excited about trying this idea because I love snow. I find snow so inspiring, and I wanted to make sure I added some more snowy drawings into this sketchbook. So you can see this snowy landscape with this very dangerous looking path up to this lonely looking outpost, with these cliff edges and this very dangerous looking drop off with this dark shading that contrasts this area where I've got the snow coming across sideways and the light shining down and highlighting this patch of snow. With drawings like this, I love to add all the shading first, and then I add the highlights on top. It's such a fun process, especially on this toned tan paper. Following on from that, on day 16, the word was rocket. And this one actually ended up being one of my favourites of the month. I've never tried an idea like this before, so I was really pleased with how this turned out, with the dark background helping to make the rocket stand out. And on the rocket itself, I tried to add a bit of a retro style with the panelling, and a hint of colour with the crimson and yellow. And I also tried to add some stylised dust clouds as it's taking off. You can see the horizon in the background with the craters and the sun and the stars. Now, I'm so pleased with this one. I would love to try and draw some more rockets in the future. Then on to day 17, and the word prompt was storm. And this one was also one of my favourites of the month. And so it was awesome, having 2 very positive days of drawing and trying new ideas. That's what I really enjoy about Inktober. So you can see the storm at the centre, and I tried to add lots of contrast to it to make it stand out. You can see the extremely dark shading down this side, and the bright highlights on this side, everything being highlighted by the moon in the background. And you can see the swirling and the whirlpool, and I tried to use lots of white ink to add all the special water effects, especially on the waves, and that was so much fun. And you see the ship there as well with the crimson sails, so is the red caped character on board? Then on to day 18, and the word prompt was trap. And see, the red caped character again. So this is a snowy landscape, and I tried to give the story that there's this large monster, maybe a dragon or something, that's waiting at the end of this track, and it traps lots of people that walk by. And the red-caped character obviously knows that. They're standing up here, and maybe they set a trap for this monster. But it's just really fun to work on another snowy landscape, using all the same effects again, with the snow falling down, the light shining down as well, and highlighting this patch of snow. I really enjoyed trying ideas like this, and it was fun to think of the story behind this one. Moving on to day 19, and the word prompt was dizzy. Which is interesting because we had the word prompt dizzy for last year's Inktober, and that time I worked on some spiralling clouds with some birds flying. This time I thought I would look in a different direction across a mountain landscape, and you can see the mountains there. And I wanted to have spiralling clouds again going in towards the sun, so my main focus on this one was to use the Copics, blending between them to create a nice smooth gradient, going from the light shading all the way towards the much darker shading in the foreground. And I also added some water down here, and the sun shining down. Really fun to try, and hopefully it's quite effective. Then on to day 20, and the word was coral. And a family friend just a few days before this had asked if I'd ever drawn an octopus. They would really like to see me try and draw one. So I thought this was the perfect opportunity to try that. So I spent a lot of time trying to add all the different types of coral with different ink effects. You can see them all around here. And then I spent a lot of time on this octopus, getting all the patterns and stuff, trying to get them correct. And the sun shining down and beaming right down here and highlighting everything. This was really fun, trying to get that underwater effect. After that, on day 21, the word prompt was sleep. And this one was really fun. I've never drawn a flamingo before. I'll admit this was my second attempt at this drawing, because the first time I added too much black ink and it literally destroys the paper. So the second time round I was much more careful and it worked out luckily. But I just really like the contrast, adding that dark black background with the colour and the bright highlights of the flamingo, adding some water and the reflection. This one was so fun. And then chef was the word prompt on day 22. And I was initially thinking of trying a campfire with a pot and some trees in the background, but then I decided to go back to my fantasy world setting, and I'm imagining this is a giant cauldron and they're cooking up a huge meal. You can see the bone sticking out there, they chucked in some mushrooms and some roots, and then I added this stylized steam rising up. This was another really fun one. The word prompt on the 23rd day was rip, and so I tried to get a bit of a double meaning from this one, with the gravestone saying RIP, rest in peace, and this hand is ripping up through the ground. I really enjoyed trying this idea. I thought since it was October, and the spookiest month of the year, I needed to try and work on some scary drawings at some point. You see, I tried to add layers with the trees in the distance, and the trees closer to the foreground with the church, another layer with the gravestone, and the foreground layer with the hand, and the moon shining down and highlighting everything. And then on to day 24, and the word was dig. This one took a long time, trying to get all the inking and the shading done, but yeah, I tried to work on this cave system that the Red Cape's character is looking down into. I wonder who built this structure with these wooden beams. You see the water has pooled at the bottom, and the moon and the stars are shining down and highlighting, and it gets darker and darker down into the cave. Next up, on day 25, the word prompt was buddy. And this one means a lot to me. As some of you know, I love cats, and this year my cat Smudge passed away back in May, and I really struggled with this. He was always there while I was drawing, so drawing wasn't feeling the same, and I struggled with my creativity. So that's why I was looking forward to Inktober, to try and get myself back into a routine of drawing every day, and it worked. It was a really positive step. And I've always tried to add at least one cat drawing into my Inktober sketchbooks, and I'm always going to continue that tradition as long as I do this challenge. In this drawing, I imagine it's Smudge and Charlie. We lost Charlie a couple of years ago as well. I really miss them. I love them so much, and they're the reason I always add cat drawings to this. I just wanted to share that with you because this one really means a lot to me. On day 26, the word was hide. And you can see I added this snake slithering through this tree, and this little mouse is hiding on the tree root. I really enjoy drawing trees in this style with the twisting trunk, and the leaves with the negative space, and the roots that stretch outwards. I also added this large moon in the background to highlight everything, and hopefully make the snake stand out, also adding that crimson colouring. Then on to day 27, and the word was music. And so I worked on this gramophone. I've never drawn a gramophone before, and it was a tough challenge trying to get the shapes correct here. And you can see a kitten is hiding behind and enjoying listening to the music. Moving on to day 28, and the word prompt was float. And the red-caped character is back, and they're floating on this raft. You can see the paddles here, and they're looking up at these massive floating islands. So I wonder what kind of awesome adventure they're on now. This was one of those days when I very quickly had a picture in my mind of what I wanted this drawing to look like, and I'm really pleased with how it turned out. It's always fun to add this red-caped character into the drawings and imagine their story. On to day 29, and the word prompt was shoes, and this shoe is making a nice home for this mouse, sheltering from the rain. You've got some mushrooms here, with this mushroom actually growing out of the shoe. You've got some plants in the background, and as the rain's falling down, it's forming some puddles in the foreground. Just a very happy looking mouse, sheltering from the rain with its shoe home. Then on day 30, the word was ominous. And with this one, I tried to give the perspective of someone about to climb these steps up towards this very scary and ominous looking skull cave. I found it really fun to focus on the details of the skull with the cracks and the mossy patches, the moonlight shining down and highlighting these edges, and just generally trying to make it look as ominous as possible with the dark shading. It was really fun. Then finally, on day 31, for Halloween, the word was crawl, and so I worked on this. Similar to last year's Halloween drawing, with a pumpkin in a pumpkin field, everything grey-toned except for the brightly coloured pumpkin. But this time I added some spiders and some spider webs. And these spiders are based on the marbled orb weavers, which are also known as pumpkin spiders, so I thought they'd fit in really well on this drawing. And that's it, that's my final drawing in this sketchbook. I had an amazing time with Inktober this year. I prioritised the challenge throughout October, and it helped me so much. It was a great way to get back into the processes and the techniques, and regain my confidence with inking, both with the microns and the brush pens, and also with markers and keeping the shading nice and smooth. And I just really appreciate this challenge for encouraging us to try different drawing ideas each time. And as I mentioned earlier, the schedule of this challenge truly helped me and my creativity, and that means a lot to me. It was a really fun month. Let me know if you took part in Inktober or any other variations of the challenge. And how did it go for you? Did you have any art goals for the month? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. And also let me know what you thought of my sketchbook, and also if you have any suggestions for future art projects I could try. I would really love to know. If you want to see more art videos, then feel free to subscribe to this channel, and any likes or shares on this video are hugely appreciated. If you want to follow and support my art progress, then be sure to check out the links in the description for my Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and Patreon. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for the support. I really hope you enjoyed this sketchbook tour, and I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you all soon.